Hello, and welcome to the Paducah Human Rights Commission television show, PHRC Raising the Standard, and we consistently try to do so. We have a really delicate, controversial topic that we're going to cover today, and it's because I've had so many people ask me to do so over the years, and now we have a terrific guest who's going to be able to not only handle it as an attorney, but she also has a sensitivity and a compassion for it, and it's very important that we handle all of our topics with those same characteristics. And so we welcome attorney Sam Bussey from which law center?
Bryant Law Center.
Bryant Law Center, and co-host Commissioner Andrew Wiggins.
Well,
thank you for being here with us,
thank you
Attorney
guys.
Bussey. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad I could be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
And I was going to say, Commissioner Wiggins, that I kind of like our guests to give the name of their organization because for some reason it just seems to lend a really big thing for me just to have you actually say it.
Yeah.
And so people can connect you with the organization. Right. And Commissioner Andrew Wiggins is one of our newest board members. And so he immediately started getting his feet wet. So Commissioner Wiggins, take it away.
Yeah. To begin with, Attorney Bussey, I think to orient our viewers, it'd be good for them to know, what does LGBT stand for?
All right, that's a very good question because I'm sure people really don't know. So it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. And of course, I mean, it's a debate as to what gets added on to the end. There are several other letters that talk about, but the traditional is LGBT.
Great. And we'll just go right into the meat and potatoes of it if you're fine with that. Let's talk about some historical circumstances and specific cases, possibly, just however you want to approach this, that caused the transition from no laws to needing laws to protect folks in the LGBT community.
Sure. Well, I feel like I could spend forever talking about that because there are so many, but I would definitely say the ones that are the most influential, of course, the 2015 Obergefell, I always get his name wrong, sometimes it's hard to say, the same-sex marriage. And I'm really honored to say I got to be there for that oral argument. I went to D.C. and waited outside and camped out and got in for 3 minutes of the oral argument. So that was pretty amazing because, I mean, it's historic. I would also say that, you know, it is a very old case, but Loving v. Virginia, although it was for interracial couples, that is the main case that they argued in the same-sex marriage case. So that's, you know, a big, big, big thing. I would also say that another one would be Windsor. A lot of people don't know what that is, but that's the DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. That's when they struck it down. There's actually a documentary on Netflix if anybody wants to educate themselves about that. Edie Windsor and her partner Thea. That's when some states recognized same-sex marriage, but others weren't. And so they got married in a different state, came back, and Thea was really sick. And the court would not recognize Edie as her partner to be able to get her benefits when she passed away. So they took it all the way to the Supreme Court and they struck it down. So that was a big, big case.
Commissioner Wiggins, Attorney Sam, it really grieves me about the level of prejudice about the differences with people. My husband and I have an interracial marriage, although my family tree looks more like the United Nations itself. My husband is Caucasian American, and we had 2 bad experiences early on in our relationship, and we've had none that were apparent to us since then. And you mentioned a moment ago about same-sex marriage and how one of those originated that way. At that time, interracial marriages was as heated and controversial and hate-filled as LGBT has been from the beginning up to the present.
Right. That's very, very true. Yeah, well, I mean, in that case, the Supreme Court said, you know, marriage is a fundamental right. They didn't put a definition on what, you know, marriage was as far as it was between, you know, 2 women, 2 men, interracial, and so that was the, you know, solid argument that they made in the same-sex marriage case.
Exactly.
And we won, so,
yeah,
you know, awesome. Yeah.
So that did a good job of detailing some of the federal protections or issues that have brought this to the forefront. what I'd like to know, what about the state of Kentucky? Have we seen anything here in our home state, needs for protections, and then has there been any response to that?
Right. Well, I would definitely say that Kentucky needs a lot of work as far as, laws and everything to protect the LGBT community. I'm sure, everybody is aware of the controversial bathroom bill that's going on. What's funny to me is how did all of this all of a sudden, arise? Because I feel like, for so many years, this could have been going on and nobody had even known. That is a big thing. Bullying within the schools and allowing the school system to, let bullying against LGBT individuals take place. With the governor signing a new bill into law that allows that, says a lot about our state that we need to move forward instead of taking, 2 steps back. It's like every time we take 1 step forward, we take 2 back. I feel like southern states are a little bit behind, and we definitely need some more protection in Kentucky. It really grieves me to think about, how we're not up with some of the other states, because we should be.
Attorney Bussey, would you say that this side of the equator, for example, is probably filled with a number of evangelicals and other religious sects or denominations who argue the fact that God created man and woman in the Bible? God also created holiness. And so there are a number of unholy things and lifestyles that are out here now. And so would you say that in the southern states, they tend to want to shove the Bible at people as opposed to look at the entire Bible and all that God says in the Bible?
I would agree with that, absolutely. I think, not to get on a religious track or anything, but I think the main thing to remember is the broad concept of it. I grew up Catholic. The Catholic Church is not as accepting of the LGBT community, but I was always told that I was made in the image and likeness of our Lord, and if I was, then well, I am the way I am, so He created me, and anything God creates is not evil, so that's the way I've kind of looked at it. And it's sad that other people don't have that broad concept. Love is love, God loves me, and so I would say that this way it is a little bit the Bible Belt. You see that kind of, the Bible thrown at some issues with LGBT, definitely this way a little more than up north.
And just a sidebar for everybody, the Paducah Human Rights Commission knows very well how to separate church and state. As an ordained minister of the gospel, I also know how to separate things. And I just want to tell you that regardless of your religious beliefs, you see 3 human beings before you right now covering a topic that's very important and controversial to all human beings. And so we'll ask you to be the good person that you are, and be sure to make sure that you learn something in this educational experience and then share it with other people. Commissioner Wiggins?
Yeah, Sam, could you talk about some of the more well-known human rights violations toward people in the LGBT community? I mean, what kinds of how are they suffering? What are they seeing coming their way when their rights are violated?
Well, are you meaning as far as the type of discrimination and stuff?
Yeah, and then specific cases and how it's manifested.
I would say that specific cases, it's hard for me to name, actual names of it, because there are so many that you see pop up lately. I think a big issue that is coming up, honestly, is with our teens. You see that the suicide rate is going up because of the bullying. I've seen more and more cases arising against the school system, the teachers, the educators not doing things. And children of young ages are, ending their life because of, who they want to be. Whether it's they want to wear a, t-shirt with, a Barbie on it or something. Those are just clothes. That doesn't define who the person is. And I think that the way that things are evolving as millennials, it's become a problem in the schools. And I think that is probably the biggest area that I think really needs improvement. You see a little bit in employment still, but honestly, I think that really depends on who your employer is. Of course, there are laws of the state, Kentucky does not protect LGBT in regards to employment issues, but I have a great employer, and I'm so thankful for him and everything that he's done for me and the support he's given me, but not everybody gets that lucky. I know in law school, I got told quite a bit that when I would be interviewing that, I may want to change my appearance or I may want to do this. But in order to create the change, we can't change ourselves. So that's, a big thing. We have to be who we are in order for it to move forward. So I would say that those are still some areas, but definitely with, the teens in the school system, the bullying. That would be the main thing that I think would be going on right now.
And we'd like to thank the Bryant Law Center for being a wonderful employer.
Yes, definitely.
In the schools with our children, whenever children do dangerous things, the unlearned will always blame it on something other than the real root cause. There are children who are committing suicide because of the way they are. Wouldn't it be tragic if all of us just went out and we all committed suicide because we all have something that's different from somebody else? I find it ludicrous and very dangerous for adults in the educational system at any level, public or private or Christian, who don't stand toe-to-toe with that spirit or with that presence and handle it head on, because the educational experience, the social experience in our communities, they are equally the right and the privilege of all human beings.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Commissioner?
So we're starting to see, I kind of want to piggyback on your last answer, and we're starting to see a lot of fairness ordinances come up, particularly in cities.
Right.
What are the, legally, what power do they have? And but then also socially, what does that communicate to the LGBT community there?
Well, so legally, obviously, federal trumps state, but as far as, commissions like, the Paducah Human Rights Commission, trying to invoke something like that, I think that, cities, you can either go with it or you won't, it's not, I guess, an enforceable law, so to speak. It is, but it isn't. If the government, like say, the state, the governor, Matt Bevin, if he was to write something that was saying, these are not allowed, obviously it would get struck down. But I do think that, when there is that push for, a fairness act or something like that, it does speak loud. I mean, it speaks volumes. Hey, there's somebody who's hearing me. There's somebody who's listening. There's somebody who wants to fight for not just my rights, but everyone's. And not put me on a pedestal because I am LGBT, but include me with everybody else. And I think that that's big. It sends a huge message, especially to a state or, a city that is more conservative or, you see more discrimination in. I mean, it's huge. And the fact that those people are taking a stand too, I mean, they're the real heroes,
I grew up in a very rural area, Ballard County, just near here. And, in my childhood, some very backwards ideas, and I think that people are always amazed that the people and things they don't spend time with, when they demystify those things, when they spend time with these human beings, then they find that there's nothing there to fear or hate. Right,
exactly. I think labels cause a lot of that, unfortunately. Just know me as Sam. Don't put the tagline to it. That's who I am. That's who I want to be seen. If it's something else, then okay, that's fine, but I'm just a person like everybody else, and I think that's the way that, we kind of have to look at things, because the labels really do affect, the fear, the stereotypes. That's where all that comes from, so.
In the state of Kentucky, could you cite any criminal actions that have taken place that have ended up in arrest and in the courtroom?
To my knowledge, honestly, none that I can think of. None where, it's been, the main cause has been like LGBT, something with that. Of course, like you said earlier, it gets blamed on different things. Of course, like say if somebody who happens to be in a school and they get, assaulted, and they just happen to be LGBT, that's probably not going to come out in that, they're just going to focus on the act. My area isn't typically criminal, so I really don't know a lot that goes on with that. That's more attorney Emily Rourke. But to my knowledge, and with this issue, I have not seen it like specifically, you know, hey, they committed an act against LGBT. And like I said earlier, Kentucky really doesn't have a lot of protection for us, so you don't really see it that often.
Are crimes that are committed against LGBT or are suspected to be because of LGBT, how would that be handled? What are the responsibilities of the law enforcement, and what types of expectations or things that have already been established by judges and those types of things?
Yeah.
If you can.
Well, you know, I think that that's another issue too, because obviously, you know, Supreme Court ruled on same-sex marriage, but yet you still have states that are trying to, you know, go against that law. And by creating, you know, their own bills or trying to, you know, create some type of act that can prevent that. So, you know, you get that shift, and then you don't really have everybody trying to abide by, you know, the supreme law. And then as far as law enforcement stuff, of course, you know, the very broad, simple answer would be, you know, to handle it accordingly. Obviously, you know, discrimination against anybody should be handled with, you know, sensitivity, regardless of, you know, LGBT, black, white, you know, purple, brown, whatever. But again, you can't really hone in on somebody's personal beliefs or prejudices towards that, which I think is kind of hard to separate, you know, with law enforcement, with, you know, educators, those type of things. Because that plays a role too. Somebody's personal, you know, grievances towards, you know, the LGBT could play a role in the way they choose to handle a situation. So, you know, I think that obviously the right thing to do would be, you know, to get involved and take the appropriate measures. You see a lot with the Human Rights Campaign, getting involved with those type of things when, like, a state won't handle it accordingly and everything, so to speak, with that. I would say one instance, and it's old, Andy, you might be familiar with this, Matthew Shepard case was a very, very, very big case. It was very sad. He was a student at a college who was LGBT, and he was beaten and tortured to death and then left to die. And he was an LGBT member, and his parents started an organization now to help fund, you know, money to fight against that, those type of things. So I think with that too, from what I've read on it and what I know, law enforcement didn't properly handle it accordingly, and then it went above and beyond to, you know, get the Human Rights Campaign involved in those type of things. So,
good.
Yeah.
How about adoption?
Yeah, that's a good issue, because recently, I would say just of last year, all 50 states now have made it legal for same-sex adoption. It was, Mississippi was the last state to do it. In March 2016, the court struck down the ban against same-sex adoption and made it unconstitutional. So now it is legal in all 50 states, which is great. Of course, there are still some states trying to fight against it. And like I said, that's kind of the problem with the marriage, you know, you see religious freedom acts come up, the adoption thing. But as far as right now it stands, all 50 states are legal with that. So,
how does the law regard, say, a religious figure who chooses not to participate in marry a LGBT couple, or a business owner that refuses services to them, or how does the law regard them where we stand currently?
Well, so that kind of gets into some state action type stuff, you know, under the 14th Amendment Constitution. If, you know, obviously if it is a privately owned business, you know, they're allowed to do what they want. To discriminate against LGBT, you know, they can say, hey, I don't want you to come in my business. But, you know, it strikes me as odd, because if I walk in, how are you going to know? Just based on my, you know, appearance, how do you know? You know, so it's really funny to me why anybody would take the time and the effort to do that, because you'd have to do some serious investigating, I feel like. And then with religious leaders, you know, they can't be forced to do it. Hopefully, you know, you can find somebody who, you know, is accepting and, you know, will do it. But as far as, you know, a law to do that, that would be, you know, a mix between church and state, and they can't enforce, you know, a religious leader to marry somebody of the same sex.
If denominations, or if a church is receiving state and federal funding,
Right.
does that change the expectation of religious leaders and marrying same sex?
You know, it could. It depends on how much, you know, is involved. You know, if they if they are entangling, getting too much involved with religious, funding and all that stuff, really, as far as the Constitution goes, they're not supposed to do that. If there's too much entanglement involved, then that's not good for the state. They're not supposed to get involved in those type of things. So it's really hard to say because, they can obviously give money, but it can't be, hey, we want to do this to support Catholics because they're Catholic and they want to do this. We can give money to just say, hey, build something for your, denomination, not necessarily get involved to the beliefs. So, that's kind of a hard one. My gut wants to say that no, they still can't force them, but just because of the separation with church and state on that and the funding thing with the Constitution. So.
I just heard a really great piece the other day about an organization in California called Racism Anonymous. And it was a bunch of people that acknowledged that they were racist and wanted to get together and try to find a way to overcome that. They wanted to transcend those beliefs that they felt were deeply held by them. And I was wondering if you had advice to give to people who were dealing with fear or hatred toward the LGBT community. How would you advise those people to help them to try and get over that and to improve their lives by doing so?
Well, I would say that, in order to overcome fear, you got to face the fear.
Indeed.
So, everybody has their own beliefs and everything like that, and you can't force somebody to think a certain way or to do that. But I think if you took away those stereotypes and that label and just hung out with somebody, or like you said, that group, it would be cool to see a group of people come together and not know anything about the other and not learn if they're LGBT, or whatever until the end. Like they spent time with them. Oh, you didn't think this way till you found out after, I think that would be something really cool to see. And then it would kind of be a cool study to see if prejudices come because of these labels and these stereotypes. So honestly, I would say my best advice was to face it head on. I mean, if you are really wanting to, get over this because maybe you were taught a certain way or that, hang out with somebody who is LGBT. I mean, I think people have this mindset that, oh my gosh, they're gonna hit on me, or, because I'm this sex and they like that sex. And that's such a misconception, and that's something that I think we need to overcome too. We're just people, just hang out with us, have coffee with us, talk to us. And I think that's a big thing that needs to happen, and that will help with the fear for sure.
The same attitude, overcoming all of those little issues that we have with people being different. The truth is that every household, everybody who lives in a household is different from the other person. Right. So what are you going to do about that?
Yeah, exactly. That's a very true statement. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Commissioner Wiggins, I guess I have a personal and professional, social, community concern about separate and unequal. And I think that the separation and treating people as not equal is just a big deal.
Right.
And then men treat women as second-class citizens.
Right.
Men treat daughters with lesser value as their sons.
Right.
From Genesis to the period at the end of Revelations, women were treated with lesser value than the livestock.
Right.
And with many men today, all across the free world and the not so free world, that is still truth.
Absolutely.
And so to just go hog wild and pig crazy because someone's LGBT is really kind of stupid to me.
Yeah.
And can I say stupid? Yeah, really kind of stupid to me, because it's not only ignorance, it's not only hate, it's not only disrespect for humanity,
right.
but the ignorance that comes out of not getting to know people.
Yeah.
When that's what we do every day, somehow or another, to some level or another, we're getting to know someone.
Right.
And I just think I don't like to use the word stupid, but Dad has said if the word fits, use it. So
yeah.
And so with that in mind, what are some of the things other than maybe having a cup of coffee with someone or hanging out with someone, what are some of the things that we ought to do mentally, intellectually, to do in order to appreciate and to respect and to understand LGBT community?
That's a very good point. I would definitely say educate yourself. Education is knowledge. You cannot say that you know about something if you don't know about something. you know, there are all kinds of resources locally. You guys, you know, the Paducah Human Rights Commission, for sure. HRC, the Human Rights Campaign. ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, you know. GLAAD, which is a gay and lesbian alliance against defamation. You know, oh my gosh, there's just so many. Educate yourself, read about it. You know, that's the way to do it. I feel like everybody's so quick to hear something from somebody else and then they think that that's true. Not necessarily. And don't look at Wikipedia because, you know, people can update that themselves. So, you know, and get involved. Get involved. You know, go to a commission meeting, sit in, listen to what's going on locally. You know, you got to start small before you can go big. And so I think that, you know, getting involved locally and then, you know, outreaching is definitely a way to do that. But definitely educate yourself. Read about it. You know, read the news. If something maybe, you know, shakes your conscience, go read about it. Go read about what's going on. Don't just assume that what you're hearing on the news is right. Or what you're hearing from somebody else. Definitely educate yourself. I'm glad you brought that up,
yes.
for sure.
As a Paducan, and we are too, Commissioner Wiggins and I, we love our community. And I know that you love your community.
Absolutely. How
is Paducah doing with all of this, would you say?
I would say that honestly Paducah is doing great. You know, I lived in Valparaiso, Indiana for a while, for 3 years when I was in law school. And that's when Mike Pence was the governor, and there was a lot of things going on while I was there. And I was actually, there was a time I was really scared because that's when the Religious Freedom Act was trying to get passed, and it did get signed in for a while. And, you know, when I came back home, I didn't have that fear. You know, I love Paducah. Paducah has been very accepting of me, of my partner, and I really, really love that. And I love, you know, what the Paducah Human Rights Commission is doing, because I didn't even know there was one, like, you know, when I was in law school and everything. And to see that there is, that is, you know, very much, you know, it just takes me back. You know, I mean, I get emotional if I talk about it because I would have never thought, especially, you know, a small town in Kentucky, because it definitely wasn't like that when I was in high school. You know, there was a point when I was scared to come out because of everything going on. So I definitely say Paducah is awesome. It's a great place to live. I have never had any problems here. And I know plenty of other LGBT individuals who, you know, would feel the same. Absolutely. And some people may know Vesa. She walks around downtown. She's transgendered. And I talk to her all the time, and she's happy as a cucumber. I mean, seriously. And, you know, she walks around confident, being who she is, and I never see anybody give her any problem. And that's comforting to know.
Awesome.
You know, yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, and that's a good segue to ending our show today.
Feeling really proud right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Me too.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you for being so outstanding, such an outstanding guest.
Thank you.
Yes, and then I want to commend Commissioner Wiggins for being such a great co-host.
Absolutely.
And to WKCT, a great television department. Thank you to the crew for doing a great job. And we'd like to encourage you to go to our website. We share it with the City of Paducah. Thank you, City of Paducah. And then you just go in, just Google Paducah Human Rights Commission, go to Boards and Commissions, click on, and then go to the Human Rights Commission, and you will find more information than you may ever need. You can click on our newsletters, you can click on our annual events, our mission, criteria for becoming a board member, all sorts of things, including our student interns. You'll see all of that in our newsletters. And like Attorney Bussey said, you know, we just, she loves the fact that we have a Human Rights Commission, and we try to raise our standard so that we can be more than just an organization that comes together once a month and have a meeting and talk about all the problems. We believe in being a part of the community, educating, mediating, reconciling. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.